So I grew up right here, not too far away from here on 40th and Hoover, place that is known as the Dark Jets. My biggest issue as a kid was just I wanted to have things that I didn't have, and it was around me, so only way to get it was to take it. They're like, oh, if you don't know, if you've never done it, you probably shouldn't do it. Telling a 19-year-old, 18-year-old kid don't do something, you might as well tell it, you might as well just shove it up his nose in that moment.
Right.
Apparently they have PIs that will go walk up and apparently there was photos of me at the home regularly and
Private investigators doing this?
Yep. There was a $1 million bail at that point. So it was like there was no getting out. I don't have money. I don't come from money. So it was 15 years. I didn't take it. Second offer was 9 years. I didn't take it. And then the day that I was supposed to start picking my jury,
You did land next to somebody that most people in LA know.
Yeah.
And that was Draco the Ruler, who rest in peace.
I didn't know he was the artist behind the song. He actually rapped the song to me a cappella in the cell next to me.
Oh, that's great.
If you find yourself in a situation coming out of prison and you feel lost and like you ain't got nowhere to go, you know, just try to stay positive and try to surround yourself with people who are actually doing something, you know, good in their lives, you know?
Yo, welcome back to Reentry Network Podcast. It's your boy Yak.
It's your boy T.
And we got our boy Joshua in the building. Let's get it, man.
Josh, Mr. Fitz is in the house.
Mr. Fitz.
Right, that's what I'm gonna be called today.
Nah, man. Joshua's been with PV Jobs for some time, man, and he's gone through our trainings, but dude's character is fantastic, man. Talking to him, you wouldn't think he has such a past that, you know, a lot of people can't live through. But we're excited to hear his story and hear, you know, kind of what his experiences were, because you're a good boy, man. You weren't getting in trouble like that, but you took a wrong turn later on in life that led you to your incarceration for a little bit, right?
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about, you know, kind of your come up, where you grew up, and we'll get into kind of like where it kind of went sideways.
All right, so I grew up right here, not too far away from here on 40th and Hoover, between Hoover and Figueroa.
Okay.
Place that is known as the Dark Jets, and so that's where I grew up. I grew up there. I went to Manual Arts High School. I went to Taft High School. I went to Metropolitan Continuation School. So all schools right here, like not too far from the area, except for Palisades. Palisades is like by the beach, but that was just because
that sounds
You probably
luxurious.
you have to probably get in trouble and get bussed out there.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
normally how that works, right?
Exactly, that's how that worked. So I would catch the bus right here in front of Manual Arts at like 5:30 in the morning, and then they would bus us out there to Palisades High School.
What they call it, Pally High?
Pally High,
the
yeah.
shortened version,
Pally
High.
That's what they write on the end zone of the football field when they have home games. It says Pally in the
Holy shit.
in the end zone. Yeah.
Was it like a nice school though? It sounds like it would be a nice school by the
Pally
beach,
High
bro.
stands for Palos Verdes. That is probably one of the nicest.
It's nice.
It's a very nice. It's a charter high school.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So
it's
it's a lot of, like, you would see kids being dropped off in Aston Martins and Lambos and in fancy cars. You get me? All the kids that were actually locals from that area we were just the outsiders coming on the school bus, you know. But there was a lot of money at that school, which turns out why I got kicked out. Because
Okay.
it was too much temptation, and I was a kid from South Central that didn't have much, so I was that kid breaking in lockers and taking people's phones or watching what people had, and just like I had sticky fingers as a young kid, so that was my downfall as a kid. Because I would never get in trouble for I've never been a gang member, as I've already told you guys, but my biggest issue as a kid was just I wanted to have things that I didn't have, and it was around me, so only way to get it was to take it, you know. So sometimes that's how I would that's how I found myself in problems throughout a lot of my teenage years and high school years, was just stealing and enjoying attention, I guess, trying to be that class clown. So even when I did go to class, the few times that I did go to class, it was just to shit on the teacher, or like be a jokester, you know, I guess you could, if you want to call it that.
Hey, I'm curious though. from chopping it up beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
you grew up with both parents.
Yes, I did.
What type of like program did they run for you? And you know, how did they even give you enough wiggle room to be able to kind of get some of those things in play, some of those habits?
Okay, so my wiggle room was those 8 hours where I was at school. That was
that
it.
right? Okay.
It was no wiggle room
Yeah.
for a long time. For a long time, it was literally I needed to be home. With the times when I was going to manual arts, when I lived like a 10-minute walk from my house, if I wasn't home within 15 minutes after that bell rang, I was probably getting my ass whooped. Or there was going to be some repercussions. It was like something was going to be taken away. I wasn't going to be allowed to play basketball that weekend or whatever the case might have been. There was going to be some type of punishment. So my parents were super strict. They were both Christian parents. My dad was actually the director of instruments at church. So my dad was at church, and this was a Christian church. So my pops was at church Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturday evenings, Sunday in the morning, and Sunday in the afternoon.
Damn.
So we were at church all the time, and we had no choice. It wasn't I don't want to go today. I don't feel like going to church today. No, you getting ready and you going to church. It was no and if buts. You didn't have an option. It was you're getting in this car and you're going to go to church, and you're going to sit in that front row with me and your mama, because that's where they made us sit. Yeah. Because my parents were, and my mom, I didn't elaborate on her. She was the Sunday school teacher for the teenagers.
Same thing at the church?
At the church. At the same church.
Man.
At the same church. So they were both looked at as like role models at that church. You know, they were looked at as figures of like, people looked up to my parents in that church to a certain extent. You know, they weren't the pastors or anything, but they were still like, they played a role, a significant role in that within the church. So, definitely my parents had no say or no like not they had a say, but they had no doings in the decisions that I made. If anything, they always steered me in the right direction. I just decided to make my own decisions at a certain point, you know.
Did you think that created some type of pressure for you though? Some weight on your shoulders, knowing that you had to be an example kid because of who your parents were in those settings?
I mean, did my parents try to impose that pressure? Definitely. Okay. My parents were those types that wanted us to be an example like they were being. You know, they wanted us to be that. And for the most part, my two, because I have one older brother and two younger brothers. Okay. And for the most part, they did a decent job of upholding that standard that my parents put on the table. I was always that one that kind of tried to go against the grain. So, it was it was there. The pressure was there, but I didn't care for it. Honestly, it didn't bother me because I was just this kid that was just so free and so like I thought I could do whatever I wanted, and I didn't care about consequences. At that age, like I would get grounded. I was always grounded. I was grounded probably 9 months out of every year throughout my teenage years, and that grounding like did nothing because like I told you, my hours of operation were from the moment I got dropped off at school to the moment I had to be back home. So that was kind of like, that was my wiggle room. And that's when I would engage in the activities that I would engage in. Although, like I said, when I was young, it was just me either ditching school, me completely not being on campus, or me, taking something that didn't belong to me.
Well, you know what's interesting to me though? It's like you're staying away. You're still kind of like breaking some of these rules, but you're still staying away from the whole idea of like that gang life. Were you still hanging out with gang members at that time? Like, was your community gang members?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, growing up in South Central, it's just about any community within this area is gonna be gang infested. You know, there's gonna be within a 3-block radius, you might run into 3 different gangs. You get me? So it's like, it's definitely always been there. And at one point, there was times where they actually wanted me to be from a certain gang, and they would ask me every day when I would walk into the building, when you gonna get put on a set, this and that, like slap boxing. They would have me out there slap boxing with grown-ass men, damn near. I would be a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid slap boxing with guys that were 18, 19 years old, And this was just like a daily, I don't want to say a daily thing, but it was a regular thing that would happen, where it was just like, we want to see, where your hands at, this and that. And you know, and me just being myself, and I don't know, I wouldn't want to back down from it. You know, I would probably get my ass whooped every now and then, but I was like, I was there. You know, I stood my ground, and
You got the hands going now. Like you started building your game on your hands, or what? You can fight now with that.
I mean, I was a little skinny, 120 pounds probably. Like I was, and I'm still not the biggest. You get me? But I felt like I could hold my own as long as the guy wasn't too much bigger than me. But
no, that's so. Even your friends are dudes that they're not, but they weren't necessarily telling you got to do it. They're just asking, yo, when you gonna do it? Like in other words, would you relate to?
Yeah, I think luckily I think that was the fortunate side of it. It was never pressed on me because I've heard stories of people that grew up in these areas, but I think they were doing a lot more hanging out too though than I was because like I said,
good
I was
distinction there.
I was that kid that had to be in the house after a certain point. You get me? This was on my way home as I was walking into the building. These little encounters would take place within a 5, 10, maybe 15-minute period, and then I knew I had to be in the house because if not, I was going to either meet that belt or something was going to happen, you know, when I got in that house if I stayed out too late. So, and this is still sun out. My parents weren't those type of parents that be in the house before those street lights come on. No, you need to be in the house 30 minutes after you get off that bus or 30 minutes after that bell rings, you know, like you need to be in the house. Sun's still out and everything. They just didn't want me. They wanted to keep us away from that environment because they knew the environment that we were living in. So, yeah, they wanted us in the house so that they could protect us from what was going on in the streets, you know?
Would your parents go like hunt you if you were a little late and you know that she was gonna come through?
My mother, absolutely. My dad would never. My dad was more of like a, I don't want to put it in like in a negative way, but my dad was more like a laid back kind of guy. He was kind of like, my mom was kind of like the enforcer in that household. My mom was kind of like the tough, like you gotta. My dad, he would co-sign everything my mom said. You know, when it came to like, because my dad didn't have a father, so my dad didn't really have a role model. So I guess he kind of took after what my mom kind of wanted to implement as far as raising us in a certain manner. And my dad was just like, my dad was more of like by the Bible kind of cat. You know, he wanted to raise us in a manner that the Bible like said was the correct way. And then my mother was just like the enforcer, kind of like, okay. And she just wanted to keep us away from that lifestyle. So that was pretty much what that was.
That makes sense, man. That's a good family structure. You had something where, you know, you on both ends, they were putting in work to make sure their kids weren't. And I can imagine how hard that has to be. Mm-hmm. Was it all males with four kids?
Four
all
boys.
Males?
Four boys. The last one came along.
That's tough. That nobody ended up kind of going that route, man.
Yeah, definitely.
So they did their job.
Right.
No, they definitely did their job for sure. No doubt about it.
I still think, because I always wonder, like, even then, is it still avoidable? Can we still do this to this day? And I feel like this kind of supports that. Like, you really still could guide a kid the right way, even if they're in a situation or in the wrong kind of like location or hood.
Yeah. Oh
yeah. And I can see real quick how much effort has to be put in from the parents, man.
For real.
Because that's 100%. That's their effort. Yep. You're young. They're telling you what to do. It ain't your decision. They're actually dispelling that, right? How many times do we think, fuck, I'm 14, I'm big enough? Nah. If moms and pops is writing you ain't. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. And I'm not gonna lie. As a kid, I was kind of scared of that belt. To a certain extent, I didn't mind the consequence. I still made bad decisions and did what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to knock on that door or go walk through that door when I knew I had gotten in trouble, when I knew that principal had called or that dean had called the house and suspended me for 3 days.
Damn.
I had a little anxiety and a little like, I was a little scared to walk into that house because I knew I was going to get my ass beat, you know, like for sure. It was good. That type of situation, it was going to be the belt. I was going to see the belt that day for sure. So certain times in that type of situation, I definitely was a little bit more weary of walking into the house in those times.
So you're getting in trouble now at school. You kind of so how did you learn the ways of the sticky hands? Where did you get that from?
I think that just came from me, bro. I would steal from the corner store. I would walk in there and stuff my sleeves with like Skittles and Snickers and stuff like that as a kid. you know?
What's the word they used to? Is it klepto? Is that what they used to say? Klepto, like a dude that just constantly you turn.
I don't know.
around,
I've never heard
I
that
think it's
word, but
klepto
it might
something,
be
but-
something that I just haven't heard of. But yeah, I think if that fits into that
Yeah, if
narrative,
that's
then
the
I
same
guess
def.
I was that klepto kid. Because I just if I couldn't have it, you know, my parents weren't the wealthiest, and then the fact that they decided to have so many kids just made it that much scarcer. Like things, you know, for us to you know, it
yeah.
made it harder for us to have things because they were so busy trying to maintain 4 kids and a roof over our head and their car payments, and you know, it's a lot of stuff that goes
Right.
into adult life, you know, and we didn't live with, you know, it's not like we lived with my dad's mom or my mom's mom. Like my parents had their own place my entire life. As far as I can remember, they always had their own place with us, you know, so they were always had that stress on their shoulders as well.
So
That's interesting.
now, I kind of want to start getting into more towards
Yeah,
the set this or where you kind of started getting really involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you now? Let's say between like middle school and high school, did you ever go into like juvenile halls or get incarcerated? You know, get
Never.
arrested? Nothing.
Never. I had one ticket, which was at Palisades High School when I stole this girl's Dolce & Gabbana purse with an I-860. If you remember those
that a
Boost
chirp?
Mobiles, the chirp,
Okay.
the one that clicked to open.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I stole that. Literally, I didn't even care about the purse. I just knew she had that phone. And it was like, at that time, the phone had just came out. I believe it had been out for like a week or two when I realized this girl had it. So I went in her backpack while she was sleeping. And I
Sleeping
took...
in school.
At school?
Oh,
She was
knocked
sleeping.
out, huh?
What?
And well, it was actually on the school bus on the ride back home.
Ah.
So she was actually a hood kid too, because she was obviously catching the bus out there. But apparently, I don't know, she had this phone, and I wanted it. So I went in as she was sleeping on the bus, and I pulled her purse out of her backpack with the phone in it. I gave away the purse to a friend of mine, and then I kept the phone and the money that was in the purse. The next day, I decided to go to school with that phone in my pocket.
Like
And
any
apparently-
kid probably would after that. You gonna show it off. You got
Yeah.
a new phone.
But I didn't even get an opportunity to show it off because they literally came and got me out of my first period class. They come in,
Damn.
they pull me into the office, and as soon as I walk into the office, the girl who it belonged to was sitting in the office. They say, well, we're hearing that somebody's saying that they saw you go in this girl's backpack on the bus ride home. So did you take anything? And I was like, no, I didn't take nothing. At that point, I'm not going to tell on myself. Then they say, okay, so we're going to pat you down real quick. They went in the first pocket they went in, the phone was right there, and they pull it out, and they're like, hey, excuse me, ma'am, is this your phone? Yeah, that's my phone. And at that point, that was the only trouble I got in as far as like legally. So that was the only time I really got a ticket for petty theft, which was minimal, you know, but they had me doing a metro cleanup, cleaning up the side of the freeways with like a whole bunch of other teenagers, most of which were there for tagging, though. You know, most of their cases were like them vandalizing and stuff like that, so they had gotten cases for that. But that was the only time I got in trouble as a kid. So I never hit the halls. I never YA, none of that. I never experienced that. I didn't.
I'm interested. What was your parents' reaction to that?
Oh, my mouth got busted that day.
Oh,
Damn.
And that was actually from my dad. The one that I said is more calm
Yeah.
in demeanor. The day that he found out, he picked me up in his red little Honda. And I just remember getting in the car and catching the back of his fist to my mouth. As I sat in the passenger, he just backhanded me with like his whole fist, and just whole mouth and nose was like leaking. But he was pissed. He was pissed because he had to show his face. So he had a level of embarrassment too. Of
course.
Having to show up to the school like, hey, your kid's getting a ticket. You know, police officers, school police there, handing me this ticket and telling my parents and running the whole thing down. And that also was the reason I got kicked out of that school. So that was where my stay at Palisades ended.
And then that was already high school. You're already
Yeah,
kind of
that was already high
gearing
school.
out towards adulthood at that point, almost sort of.
Yep.
Was that the first time that your pops got at you like that, and you've experienced that?
I think bare fist.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think
Okay.
that was probably the first time my dad hit me like with his fist.
What,
Like,
what were your
really.
thoughts with that? Because that's an eye opener sometimes, right?
Right.
Yeah, it definitely was, and I was in shock too. because my dad actually did it in front of the principal too. And the principal just
shit.
walked away like he didn't see anything. He just walked away and never said anything about it. If you do that in today's day and age, I bet you that you gonna have a
Oh my God.
DCFS
You
case.
gonna man.
Get out.
You
You,
gonna what?
stay here.
Yeah, they gonna call the cops. They gonna DCFS, all that shit is gonna be a problem after that. But no, literally it happened, and the dude just walked away like he didn't see anything. So yeah, it was a bit of an eye opener, but I don't think that lasted very long. Because then I just went right back to the same behaviors, you know.
I could think where something like that could lead someone to just push away and be like, fuck you, even more, and just go into some crazy shit.
Yeah, but I always had love for my pops though. Like I never like tried to, or I don't think I ever disrespected him like directly, like in a manner where it was face to face. His form of me disrespecting him was the way I behaved when he wasn't there. The way I carried myself, the things I engaged in, you know, that was what he had a hard time accepting. He was like, "Why I taught you better than this? Why are you doing this? We tried our best with you." And it got to a point where he gave up, you know, where he didn't want to speak to me. It was a few years. We went through like a 2-year period where he didn't say anything. He didn't say a word to me. He wouldn't say hi to me. He would walk into the house. He wouldn't acknowledge me. He wouldn't ask me if I needed something. But he would provide. He would still, you know, I would have clothes on my back. He would do the bare minimum, you know, just to like, you know.
Do you think that felt a lot colder than the hit?
Oh,
the physical?
for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I felt that. Even now, as an adult, like sometimes when I think about it, like it's still, you know. And I know the thing is that I know I let him down. So I know that it was self-inflicted, you know. Whatever he was feeling, you know, he had every right to feel that way. So I don't knock him on that at all.
I get it. Yeah, he's putting in the work.
Yeah.
He's providing. They're at work. They're at church. They're doing all the right things, and then you kind of keep slipping up.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say that you did decently well upon getting into high school, finishing it. Other than that little hiccup, how was it transitioning out of high school as an early 18, 19-year-old? What was the plan? What was the agenda?
Right.
Ooh, okay. So this is the part that we didn't touch base on this prior to this. So fresh out of high school, I was a skater kid at this point. I had discovered a skateboard, so I was skating in
Dark Star and all that shit.
all that. But I was a girl kid. I love the girl skateboards. I was into the girl skateboards. Yeah. Because I was always a ladies' man. That was my thing too. Even
that's what I wanted to ask
even in this
too.
day, this guy's a ladies' man.
It was a fucking, even in high school and shit too, you were still no kids.
No, not in high school. I didn't actually. This might be too much information, but I didn't actually lose my virginity until 17 and a half years old. So I lost it at a pretty, because I was always very small. I had like the doctors called it a late grow spurt or whatever. I don't know what the exact medical term for it was, but I was like a late bloomer. I think that's what they called it. They said I was a late bloomer. So I actually didn't like grow and like get to my height where I'm at now until I was about 18 and a half, 19 years old. I was really short for a long time throughout my time in high school. But, I was always like a ladies' man. And then at that point, when I got out of high school, I discovered the clubs. I discovered cigarettes. Because back then in Hollywood, they would give out cigarettes like for free. That was their way of advertising cigarettes. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but you're not allowed to advertise cigarettes on commercials or magazines or stuff like that. You have to. So back then, I don't know if they do it anymore, but back then they would have people in the smoking patios of the clubs with duffel bags filled up with cigarettes, and they would just scan your ID. That way they could send the advertisements directly to your home. So they would scan your ID, and then they would give you an entire pack of cigarettes. And then so I discovered the club life, and then I'm smoking, and then next thing you know, I meet some girls, and they invite me over to their place after the club. We go to their place, and as we walk into their house, these girls have lines of meth, crystal meth, on the table, on a glass table on their dinner table.
And then Hollywood party scene.
Hollywood party scene. And so they walk in there, and the first thing these girls do is drop their purse, walk up to the table, and snort a line.
I see it.
I've never done it. I had never even seen it, believe it or not. Being that I grew up in the South Central, you would think that a 18, 19-year-old kid had already seen this
Been exposed
at
to
some,
something
or
like
been exposed to it, never been around it, never seen it. So I'm over here asking questions like, what is that? What are you guys doing? They're like, oh, if you don't know, if you've never done it, probably shouldn't do it. Telling a 19-year-old, 18-year-old kid don't do something, you might as well tell it, you might as well just shove it up his nose in that moment.
Right, huh?
So I'm sitting there like, what? Y'all just did it. Why the fuck can I do it? You know? So I'm
That's
like,
crazy.
so I walk right up to the table and they're like, okay, if you want. And I did it. And I literally stayed on that drug for about 3 years. So from about 19 to about 22, I was doing crystal.
From that moment forward, though.
From that moment forward, literally.
So is this a perfect example of like that one time you hit it one time?
That
and you
one
just-
time,
you-
that feeling that I felt in that night, the thing is that the feeling that I felt that night, I don't think I ever felt again.
and that's what they say, right?
That one feeling, that high, and that the way I felt, like, and the conversations that were had, and just, I just felt like I was like a wizard. Like, like I was like a
Cotton mouth like a motherfucker, but you going
Man,
at it. You're
I had no
saying things with-
idea.
yeah.
That's the thing, that when you're in that state of mind, you don't even realize the cotton mouth or whatever the case might have been. But yeah, so that happened, and then that's when stuff kind of started spiraling a little further out of control with my behaviors and my tendencies, and but stuff like that. Yeah, definitely that drug. When I encountered that drug, I started to spiral out of control.
Were you working or anything at this time? Like, how were you holding yourself up?
So I worked at Target in Pasadena, and
That's far. You were still out here in South
yeah,
Central?
I was out here. I was
Okay.
catching the train, the Gold Line. Well, it used to be called the Gold Line. Now I think they call it the A Line or something like that. But it used to literally drop me off like around the corner from the Target that I was
Oh,
working
shit,
at.
okay.
I was actively doing drugs while I was at work. I was a cashier on drugs. Like literally, I would be there. I would have a cup of Jack Daniels and Coke in a Target cup at the register with me while I'm ringing people out, So, and ultimately, I ended up getting fired there because I lost my temper and got into a fight with one of my coworkers. So then at that point, I was kind of just like, once I was unemployed, I was basically having to do whatever I could to provide myself with that drug, or just to have a little fun on the
Right.
weekend. So I was, doing a little here and there, a little hustling here and there to like fulfill that craving, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Prior to that, no weed, no nothing. You went straight to meth?
I tried weed when I was in high school, but I didn't like it.
Okay, I
I
get it,
remember I
yeah.
tried weed when we left school with one of my friends, and then I had to catch the bus home. And being on the bus high, I felt like, no,
Yeah.
this was not for me, And then with that other drug that I was talking about, I felt very comfortable in a crowd. I felt very like I could hold a conversation. I could get a girl to come home with me, When I would smoke weed, I was more like I wanted to be alone. I wanted to be secluded. I wanted to be like left alone. I wanted to just be, I didn't want to be in a crowd. But that wasn't me. I've always been that kind of guy that like likes to be out there and be like in the mix and kind of like talk and, kind of just be where it's at, where something's happening. I don't want to be at home. And that's what weed would do to me. Weed would kind of just like more
Antisocial.
antisocial.
you just
And
there,
that wasn't
yeah.
me. Nobody knew me as an antisocial kid. I was never that. Even now, I'm not that, So that kind of took me out of that character that I really am. So I just didn't, I kind of left it alone. Even now, I don't smoke weed.
Yeah, that's
that's
nuts.
fire.
I'm just thinking like it's an extreme, right? One of them is like more of whatever, you get munchies, you whatever, and then you try that, like they don't tell you you're not gonna sleep on it. You're gonna toss and turn till you see the sun come up. You can't eat, you know? You have no desire to eat for 1, 2, 3 days, and then when you come down, you feel like kidding yourself damn near. And a
You
lot
feel
of the
like,
times,
why the hell did I do this?
why'd you do it? And some people just automatically 180, like fuck it, I tried it. That shit is crazy. Why would anybody want to do that type of drug? But
No, definitely. And I wish I would have had that realization a lot sooner, because that would have kept me out of my first case, which led to my strike, one of my strikes, which was the earliest one, which happened like around 22 23. You know,
So let's set up that scenario. So
Yeah.
fresh from Target, you get fired. You still have this bad habit.
Yeah.
And so now you're looking for ways to kind of back that habit up and support it through which stealing at the time and being probably high seems super clear. Like, fuck it, if I steal this, I can get I can get whatever I want and I can keep it going.
Yeah.
Take us up to that, man. What led to your kind of the first things?
So then after that happens, my parents kind of saw the route that I was taking. So and at that point I was unemployed, so I didn't have no choice but to move back in with my parents. And then my parents see, you know, they could kind of read the signs and see the things that I was doing. I wasn't sleeping. I was staying up. I would be out all night, come home at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. And they decide that they want to leave the environment completely. So they move out to Palmdale. My dad and my mom purchased a home in Palmdale. And so I moved to Palmdale, and I absolutely hate it. I can't do it. I don't know anybody out there. I moved out there at an age where I wasn't in high school. I couldn't meet people. I had a hard time meeting people. So
then on top of that, you don't even know where to get your drugs.
Exactly, which was a good thing, which was what they were trying to accomplish, you know, which actually kind of steered me away from it for a certain amount of time. So, and being that I was so far from LA, didn't have a car at the time. So, yeah, and me, I did prioritize having somewhere to lay my head at, you know. But luckily, you know, I didn't get to that point of mindset where, you know, some of these guys are willing to sleep on the street if it means being in that environment, you know. But I never got to that point. But yeah, so we're out in Palmdale, and I go to a liquor store. I go to a liquor store that I would always go to this liquor store where I was kind of like a regular at. And just to cut the story short, it got to a certain point where I ended up robbing that liquor store because one of the employees that worked there had disrespected me. And I was new to the environment. I didn't really know people out there. So I kind of just took it upon myself to do it on my own. And I went and I, robbed these folks because I felt the man that worked there had disrespected me. So
when you robbed him, my bad to cut you out. When you robbed him, did you use a weapon or anything?
I didn't have a weapon, but they called it strong arm robbery. So I didn't have a weapon. I just kind of try to force them to give me the money, and I ended up losing that battle. And then again, I was a little intoxicated at the time. I was off of alcohol. I was intoxicated off of alcohol, and so I made that decision, and that ended up landing me in jail. But since it was my first offense as an adult, I ended up kind of getting what people would call a slap on the wrist, being that I didn't have to go to prison. So I get a 5-year joint suspension and a strike.
So let's touch on that real quick. I don't think we've touched on that in the past. A joint suspension, you want to chop it up about that, like the pros and the cons? Everybody says they want to sign that joint suspension because you get out today, but maybe kind of explain that whole thing and how that sets you up for failure sometimes.
Yeah, so definitely I have heard a lot of stories where people have signed joint suspensions, but the thing is that they get out and don't make any changes, don't make any, like, they don't try to build better habits, they don't try to put it themselves in a different environment. So me, that was the eye opener. At least I thought, you know, at that point, which it was, because I did a good job for a long time after that. So I get out and I have this joint suspension, 5-year joint suspension, and I did end up violating that joint suspension, but luckily the judge showed me love, and because it was a very minor violation, because it was public intoxication. So I ended up going back to county jail for like a few months for that violation, but the judge ended up deciding not to impose the 5-year joint suspension, which is damn near unheard of. Because usually you have a joint suspension, you mess up, they're sticking to that joint suspension, you know? So I was fortunate in that aspect. But at that point, I think after I caught that quick violation for public intoxication and the judge decided not to impose that 5-year joint suspension and give me another opportunity by putting me in a program. She made me go to a Salvation Army Canoga Park program, which was like a sober live-in type program. So you had to live there for 6 months and go through all their protocols and go to all their classes that they required. So I did that for 6 months. And once I got out of that, I graduated the program, luckily. And after that, a few months after that, I enrolled in college. So I ended up going to college at Antelope Valley College. And that helped me like drastically to stay out of trouble. So I was able to stay out of trouble for a good while I was in college. And so that lasted for a good while. And then I ended up catching another charge when I was 28. So you could see the gap. There was a pretty big gap right there. But I went to school. I was working in Antelope Valley. I was going to Antelope Valley College, and I was working at Chic Shoes and at this little place called Jazzuli within the same mall. So I was just working there.
2 jobs,
taking care of business,
huh?
working 2 jobs. I was living with a girlfriend when I ended up catching this other charge, which is the most recent charge. So
to confirm, real quick, a joint 5-year joint suspension is what they call it, right?
yeah.
So it's like 5 years. Anything that happens within 5 years or something,
Yep.
you
So
automatic.
Before you're released from probation. So basically that joint suspension voids if you're able to give them whatever term they give you on probation or parole, whatever. Well, usually it's not parole because that's what they're avoiding. They're not sending you to prison. They're giving you an opportunity. So they're putting you on probation, and then they're giving you a certain amount of time on probation. And based on if you're able to get through that time on probation without any hiccups, without any mess ups, without any fuck ups, if you want to call it that, then that joint suspension is void. So, but if you do screw up during that 32 months or that year of whatever probation that they decide to give you, if you mess up, they throw you in prison for those 5 years. Or whatever the joint suspension might be. Because there are 10-year joint suspensions. There's 8-year joint suspensions.
Yeah, that is
There's
scary.
7-year joint
Low
suspensions.
So that's what I was saying. Like back when I was going through the system, I more often than not, I would say easily 9 times out of 10, it would apply to a lot of youngsters that are fighting cases like that. They would basically tell you, you get to go home today, but you're going to sign for a strike, 2 strikes, and a 5-year joint suspension, an 8-year joint suspension. So what they're basically telling you, it's a get free out of jail card today, but in the event that you mess up, you're going to fulfill that whole time. So too often, youngsters don't see past it, that, they're just worried about getting home that day. And so they sign it, they get home in a couple days or whatever, not knowing that their mentality hasn't changed. They're still walking in the same ways. And 9 times out of 10, you see those same dudes come back that are signed for it and now have to mandatorily serve a 5, a 10, a 8, or whatever it got.
And that's if let's say you go in for the same thing, the same case he went in, right? And then he got public intoxication. 5 years you got to serve just for being drunk
because
in
you
public.
said
in most cases, I believe. I think for me personally, I think it was just the judge.
It was rare.
I just got lucky,
Yeah.
bro. I just got lucky because I guarantee you, an asshole judge would have thrown me in prison for those 5 years. I would have been serving 5 years, and at that point, it would have been on a public intoxication. Who serves 5 years on public intoxication? Nobody. That's an overnighter, But the fact that I was let go and released with that 5-year joint suspension, at that point, it's anything could throw you back in prison. And I was just fortunate enough not to, and then after that, like I said, once they gave me that opportunity, and believe it or not, that Salvation Army program, I believe did help change my mindset, because I had to be in that environment. I didn't get to go anywhere. I was there for 6 months in this building, and they took us from that building across the street to their warehouse, which was a Salvation Army warehouse, to work every morning at 6 a.m., brought us back home at 2:30, and that was our daily program. And then from 2:30 on, you had to go to AA meetings that they conducted within that same building. AA meetings, NA meetings. They even had church every Sunday that was mandatory, that they made us attend. You had no choice, and they would make you wear a slacks and a button-up shirt. Shirt had to be tucked in at all times. It was like a very army mentality type kind of place.
Military base.
Yeah,
times,
militant. It was like a militant
There you go.
environment, the way they ran it, And me, although I hated it, for a long time, pretty much the entire time I was there. I didn't like it, but I stuck with the program because I didn't want to go to prison for 5 years. And I knew that because that
Shout
was
out to
the
them.
out. That
Yeah,
was the
it
out.
sounds like a solid program, man.
That was the out that the judge had given me. If you complete this program, then I won't throw you in prison. But if you do not complete this program, if you get kicked out of this program, I'm throwing your ass in prison for those 5 years. So that program saved me from spending 5 years in prison at that point in my life, you know?
That's nuts because you come out of something like that where you're given almost like basically a second chance.
Oh, definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
And then you,
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, you did take it though. You did start going back on your path. You went to school.
Yep.
You started doing your thing. Where did it go wrong again where you caught yourself another case?
So this part, yeah, but we'll speak on it. So point is, at this point, I'm living with the mother of my son. And
So you have a son.
Now
yeah,
you
I have a
family
son.
now.
I have a son. Yeah, I
this
had a
point.
son when he's 4 now. He's 4 now. He's gonna be 5 this year. So he was a newborn. He was a newborn. At this point, though, my girlfriend, the mother of my child at the time, was pregnant with him. She was about 6-7 months pregnant, and me and her had an argument, and the neighbors ended up calling the cops on us, and the cops show up. And then one of the neighbors said that they claimed, supposedly, that I threatened to push my girlfriend down the stairs because we lived on the 2nd floor. So at that point, they just kicked me out of the house. Nothing happened. There was no charges filed or anything. But because there was a domestic violence call, at this point, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but when there's a domestic violence call and there's children present in the home, DCFS automatically becomes involved, whether there are charges filed or not. DCFS becomes involved. So DCFS steps in, because I left the home that day because the cops told me you got to go find somewhere to go. So I went to my mother's house. I spent a few days there. And then me and the mother of my kid reconcile. You know, we figure it out. We're back on good terms. So I moved back into the home, and where I was paying rent as well. So I kind of felt like it belonged to me as well. So we went in together. It wasn't like it was her place and then I moved in. It was like we moved into that place together. So it was a joint effort, you know, to get that place, and we were there. Point is, DCFS comes into the picture about 3 weeks later and tells us, one of you guys got to go. Until we figure out what went on here, one of you guys cannot live in the home. Who's it going to be? My girlfriend at the time had nowhere to go because all her family lives in Nevada. So her job and everything for her is out here. My family luckily lived not too far away from where me and her were staying. So we made the decision that I was going to move out. So they come, they inspect the home, and I took all like my clothes to try to like for that inspection.
Oh, yeah.
But then as soon as that inspection was over, I moved back into the house because I was like, who are these fucking people to tell me to leave my home? Who are these people? You know, and I had no idea how much power DCFS really has. So I'm undermining them because I have no knowledge on who they are, on how they operate, on the power that they have. So I moved back in. They end up catching wind. Apparently they have PIs that will go walk up, and apparently there was photos of me at the home regularly, and
Private investigators doing this?
Yep.
That's nuts.
So apparently they caught wind that I was still living in the home. So they show up and they take my son when my son was only about 3 months old. At the time when the event took place, she was about 7 months pregnant. Then she ended up giving birth early. And then they ended up taking the kid when he was 3 months old. So he was still fresh. I don't even think he was 3 months. I think he was like 2 months, honestly. I don't remember the exact timeline to tell you how, but he was a baby, brand new. We were loving him. We were like loving the time that we had with him, and we were spending all of our free time with that kid, you know? And then they step in and they take the kid because we weren't following what they had implemented, which meant one of us couldn't be in the home.
And
know,
you didn't have any idea as soon as the baby was born. You had no idea they were watching or they were kind of like
no
giving
clue.
it. So
No
out of
clue.
nowhere, they just pop in like, "Hey,
It was a big apartment building. There was a lot of people. There was always people outside, people in their cars smoking, or whatever. So I would have I never
I
thought
wouldn't have
about it.
pictured them calling an apartment like that,
Yeah.
like calling people like that and
Yeah.
whatever. Most apartments like that, it's like you guys just do what you do. Everybody minds their business.
Yeah.
And
And
they
I
don't
don't
know.
think it was a neighbor or anything like that.
Okay.
I really doubt it was a neighbor. I'm pretty sure they had somebody from DCFS. Whether it was a PI or something. I call him
Yeah,
a PI just because of the work he was doing. He was
Correct.
there laying low,
Same
taking
thing, huh?
pictures. So whether you were a DCFS agent or a private investigator, whatever it was, I don't know for a fact, but I just know that the pictures were there. They were presented in court after they took the baby. So they showed, yeah, we have evidence of you in the home, you walking out of the home, you getting home from work, all this stuff. So it was just that gave them the right to take the baby at that point. And my girlfriend at the time also had a kid that wasn't mine that lived with us, Christian, and they took him as well.
wow."
So they took both kids, and I lost my shit, bro. I lost my shit, and I started saying things and making threats. Like who the fuck are y'all to come in here and take my son and like well, and I did this at the building. I went to the DCFS
county
building,
building?
the county building in Palmdale or Lancaster, and I go out there and I'm just like, letting them hear my peace of mind, and I say, and then they send me to these groups. So I say that, and they were already watching me at that point. They send me to this program where it was for me to get my son back. For me and her, they had me doing anger management classes. They had me doing parenting classes and all this stuff.
Everything.
And at one of these groups of parenting class, the guy, I forgot his name. He snitched on me too in court. He fucking showed up and told on me. He took the stand and everything. Gallegos, some dude, last name Gallegos, Marvin Gallegos, I think was his name. And he was the guy that was conducting the group. And he asked a question during the group, like, how do you guys feel about DCFS? And all of us in there are fathers, because this was an all-men group. All of us there are fathers who have had their kids taken away by DCFS. How the fuck do you think we feel about DCFS?
True, man.
Why the fuck are you asking that question? What made you think that was an appropriate question to ask, buddy? And this was fresh after my son had been taken away. So it has only been probably a week or less than a week since my son had been taken away when I was
Very
at this
fresh,
class.
yeah.
So I'm still livid, bro. I'm living every day angry. I'm not happy. Then this guy has the nerve to ask that question. And then I decide, for whatever reason, being in the state of mind that I was in, that angry state of mind, and thinking that what they had said was whatever's said here is confidential. It doesn't leave
Right,
the room,
exactly,
this, that, the
yeah.
other. And then I go in and I start saying yeah, you want to know how I feel about him? I feel like I want to run up in there with an AR and knock that shit down and just knock everybody in that bitch down. And I started talking like that, like really aggressively.
Heat of the
and
moment.
violent.
Heat of the moment.
Heat of the
just
moment.
Fresh. Yeah.
I start saying like I want to kill these people.
Yeah, in
basically.
other words, yeah.
And this dude picked up the phone apparently right after that meeting was over, called the sheriff's department and let them know that I was thinking about hurting these people at DCFS. And I guess now I came to find out that was a clause where they're able to break that confidentiality when you claim that you're going to hurt someone, hurt
Yes,
yourself, or hurt a child. They say those are the clauses where they have the right to break that confidentiality. So he didn't waste any time in breaking that confidentiality, though, which honestly, I don't like that guy, period. Like, I hope I never see him. I haven't seen him since he took that stand. But, yeah, so he basically went up there and said, so I got hit with criminal threats. And then after that happened, they ran into my house with 8 unmarked units. So this is I was kind of skipping this part. So after he calls the cops and reports those statements that I was making during the meeting, the cops show up, I believe, either the next day or within 2 days, and they raid my house. Raid my house at 8 unmarked units, and they're knocking at the door with big guns. They got body armor and everything. And they're knocking at the door, and I was home alone. I was watching a Dave Chappelle stand-up on the couch, literally just chilling. I had just gotten home from school because at this time I was going to college as well. So I had just gotten home from school, and this dude, they knock on the door. I open the door, and this lieutenant shows me the warrant to search my house. Are you Joshua Ratana? I'm like, yeah, that's me. And then they're like, all right, we have a warrant to search the house. We need to know where do you sleep? Where? Because they only searched my room in the living room. They were only allowed, the search warrant only allowed them to search my room and any other living space that was a general living space. That's what they called it. So they weren't allowed to go in my mama's room, my brother's room, but they were allowed to go in every single restroom and the living room, the kitchen, and my room. So they ransacked
That's
the whole
interesting.
house.
I've never heard of I didn't know that's how warrants work. Like you can't. Like,
Well,
it's still
not
specified.
all
I don't know.
types,
Yeah,
but
there's
some of
different
them,
types
yeah.
of warrants, you know, and I guess this warrant was that because they didn't go in my brother's room or my mother's room.
Yeah.
But they went in my room and they ransacked the entire living room. Turns out they find weapons, they find ammunition. So at that point, they arrest me. Because at that point, they said, now these threats are no longer just threats. These are something, this is something they were credible. At this point, this is something you could actually act on, you know?
So let me ask you something now.
Yeah.
Why did you have this ammunition and this stuff? Because I feel like you're in this stage right now
Yeah.
where you're like pushing away from all that. You weren't really involved in that.
Yeah.
You were kind of now you're in a situation with your family too, with the DCFS case.
Yeah.
Is that like why did you have these weapons in your? If that's something you want to answer. But.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just something that I kind of always had.
Okay.
I kind of always had something laying around just for, I don't know.
Safety
I come
precautions?
from a certain environment where sometimes shit'll pop off and somebody hurts my brother, somebody hurts my grandma. That's where everything is out the window. I don't got to be a gang member. I don't got to be out there, you know, hanging out or I don't got to be in the mix. You know, it's just like certain scenarios call for action.
Yeah.
You know, so that's all. It was just there for that reason. Because to be completely honest with you, I never intended to run up in the DCFS office and hurt any of those people. I wasn't going to do it. It was something that was said in the moment, you know, and it was a moment of anger. But yeah, the stuff was there, but it wasn't for that reason. It had already
and I'm not
been
saying
there. It had been there prior to any of those threats being made or any of those comments being made. They were already there. So if my intention was to really do that, I would have done it the same day I said it.
Yeah. No, I only asked just because I wasn't sure if it was something where it was like you were involved in shit, maybe in between, like even before the whole DCFS case, you were involved in stuff where, you know, that was something that you had, but.
No, I wasn't. I was going to school, bro. I was working 2 jobs. It was just there. It had been there for years. It's something that was just there.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That is like everybody's worst nightmare. Most dudes that get out that we talk to, and we even tell them that, like, bro, don't get caught in an argument with your girl, man, because when they call the cops, who are they gonna look at? The person that's been incarcerated before.
Yep.
You know, 9 times out of 10, it sounds like an isolated incident, but it's not, man. A lot of incidents carry on that far, you know, where the kids now get taken away, and now you're in a situation, and I feel it, you know, where you're just. Now you have an outside entity coming in telling you what to do, how to do it. You can't do this. And you're like all over one incident that probably would have been brushed over for the most part.
Yeah.
And I get it on the DCFS side. I 100% get it, especially after situations like the Fernando kid, right? When they show up to things,
And it happened in
I
the
get
same county.
And it happened in the same county, you know. So I get their reservations. They want to make sure that they're doing their job to cover all bases.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's certain scenarios where it's like, okay, this is a little easier to determine what the situation is. But it's crazy how simple domestic can escalate and lead to all these things, you know? And I'm sure you know how many dudes do we work with, do we have encounters with every day that we always got to tell them stuff like that, you know? Like, you know, don't get arguing, not even with your family, bro, because if you catch a terrorist threat, you're going back. And with the record, it's hard to kind of deal with the terrain. You know?
Definitely. Because at that point, now they're not even looking at you as like, they're looking at you as like, yeah, you did it because of your rap sheet, because of what you've done. You know, you're walking into that courtroom already looked at in a different manner. you know, as somebody would be looked at with no record. You
Yeah.
know, somebody that's walking in there with no record is not going to be looked at the same way as somebody who has been in prison, who has been incarcerated. You know, they're going to look at you a little differently.
So now it's changed. Now it's not even just
Mm-hmm.
like a DCFS case. It's now there's weapons involved and stuff.
There's
so
criminal threats.
there's criminal threats. So what does that court? What does that look like now? You go to court and they're showing all this. How are you feeling?
Arrested,
man.
go to court. Now
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no OR at this point no
Nope,
more. There's
none
no
of that. None of that. There was a $1 million bail at that point, so it was like there was no getting out. I don't have money. I don't come from money, so we didn't have 100,000 to put down on
Right,
bail.
no
you know?
10%.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm sitting there, and at that point, it's just wait until the case gets resolved. You know, at first the first offer, which everyone knows, don't take the first offer. So it was 15 years. I didn't take it. Second offer was 9 years. I didn't take it.
Nah.
And then the day that I was supposed to start picking my jury, they because I was dead set on going to trial, but then they
was there any amount of time you were willing to take at that time after being there a couple months, knowing what those charges?
I fought the case for 11 months.
Okay,
the-
for a terrorist threat, that's a long time. That's
Yeah.
like something you think you would normally.
Get
Yeah,
over and
get over- yep.
no, but they were trying to hit me with because they were saying that at first they tried to use like 4 or 5 different people that were on the case, but 3 of which I had never met. Because they were trying to use the supervisor was part of so they were trying to hit me with criminal threats on 1 count, 2 count, 3 count, 4 count, 5 counts, because they were saying that these criminal threats were aimed at this entire group that was handling my case. 3 of which I had never even met or knew their names. I'm like, how is it that I was threatening? If I was threatening anybody, was the worker directly and the person that showed up to take the kid.
And that wasn't even the case.
And that wasn't even, and that wasn't even the case, But although the threats were made, but
Yeah, but-
the willingly, was I willing to act on those threats? I wasn't going to do it, But they can't know that,
Correct.
Because only I could know that, But so with that being said, they end up giving me they end up putting the 6-year offer on the day where we're supposed to pick the jury. So we're getting ready. The jury's getting ready to enter the room, and then they say, "Okay, this is going to be your last chance. We're giving you 6 years with 80%, and are you willing to take that?" And I was like, "Give me some time to think about it." So they take me back down to the holding tank, and I called my mom. That was the person I called, and my mom was like, didn't hesitate, "Baby, take the 6 years. Take the 6 years," because they had said if I fought it and I lost, I was going to get the 15. So they were like, you fight it, you lose, you go to trial, and you get convicted, you're going to get the 15. So at this point, they had implemented that fear into my mom and myself, because who the hell wants to do 15 years in prison?
Yeah.
Nobody. Even if it's with an 80 or 85%, like you're still going to do about 10 to 12 years of that sentence, So, yeah, I didn't want to do that. And my mom was adamant about me taking those 6 years. On the phone, she said, "Yes, baby, take the 6 years. Take the 6 years." So I walked back into the courtroom a few hours later, and I agreed to the deal of 6 years. So I took 6 years with 80%, and I made it out in 2.5, though, thanks to COVID.
Okay,
No
man,
way.
I didn't
Thanks
expect
to
that
COVID.
turn. When you said 6, I'm like, I didn't even know you did 6.5
Yeah.
years, man. Like
I made it out in 2.5, bro.
2.5 from a 6 and some change sentence,
Yeah.
huh?
6 year sentence with 80%. I made it out in 2.5, thanks to COVID.
Did to me that sounds like an extreme 6 years for the terrorist threats, but I know that I've heard those.
It got
stories,
doubled up because I had a strike.
and that's what I was.
So it
gonna
was a
ask.
3
You
year.
had
It would
to
have been
a record.
It would have been. It would have been a 3 year sentence. So it would have been a 3 year sentence with 80% if I hadn't had a strike. But I already had a strike, and this was also strike. So now I have 2 strikes, which tells you
Now,
why.
even now.
Now I have 2 strikes
Okay.
right now as we speak, because I took a strike with this 6 years with 80%. It came with a strike because it was considered a violent crime, although it's
Damn,
just
man.
threats. And that's crazy. But believe it or not, I have 2 strikes, which is also why, how you guys say my character, how you guys introduced it, that's why it is what it is now for sure. I'm a little more like calm demeanored and like I'm just happy to be here,
You know, I never would have guessed that, man. You carry yourself so well.
Yeah.
And even again, it's not even just carrying yourself around the office because anybody can put up whatever persona they want.
Yeah.
You've been employed through one of our partners.
Yeah.
We've seen you in action out there getting it. And so you carry that with you even anywhere outside of here, just in general. So it's crazy to know that somebody that kind of has a good mindset to jump back into it and knows how to enroll in college and ends up still with 2 strikes, you know? You didn't have to be a gang member. You didn't have to go to the halls, and you still end up with these scenarios. And statistically, it sucks coming out the hood. You know, why is it that you had to undergo those type of things? Right. You know, but I get it. We're growing up. We're going through stuff. So if you can take us to a little bit of that journey.
Yeah.
Now you're about to take the deal. Everybody on your team is telling you,
Yeah.
go ahead and it's a good deal. Take
Yeah,
it. We don't want to
take it.
see you down for 15.
Yeah.
Take the 6.
Yeah, and at that point, they had implemented that fear to a certain extent of like being gone for that long, you know. So I end up taking the 6 years with 80%, and then I go back to county. And at this time, this was November 2020 when I took the deal.
Was that height of COVID or dying?
It was COVID hit March 2020. Okay. November, it was still actively no movement. And this was at the time, I don't know if you guys heard about this, but this was the time where the county jail was so overcrowded that they were literally releasing people on Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
Citing them and releasing them. Unless the crime was considered a violent crime, you weren't being kept. They were literally citing and releasing people for crimes that you would never get a citation and release for, you know? But so I ended up staying in the county jail for like another 7-8 months before I caught the chain to prison, you know? But that was a rough time to be in county jail because it was so overpopulated. It was crazy.
COVID, you said COVID was happening, right?
COVID was actively happening, so there was no movement.
No
Nobody
lockdowns
was
and
being,
stuff?
Huh?
No lockdowns? Because I heard there was a bunch of
no,
lockdowns.
there was a certain time where nobody had yard. Nobody was getting yard at all. You weren't. Everybody had to stay in their dorm or in their cells or whatever setting you were in within the county jail. You had to stay in that setting, you know. And at this time, I was in solitary when I took the deal because the judge had revoked my phone privileges early on, which is why I ended up in solitary.
Why is that though? Because of the like interaction with your girl at the time.
So
I
had So I had basically I was over here stupid trying to like steer somebody to like basically lie on the stand. And once the phone call was exposed in court, they revoked my phone privileges. So they took my phone privileges, and for that reason, I was thrown in solitary confinement. In
the county.
In the county jail.
And to touch on that, again, just because out of curiosity, we chopped it up about it. Mm-hmm. You did land next to somebody that most people in L.A. know.
Yeah.
And that was Draco the Ruler, who rests in peace now.
Yeah, I know, that was crazy.
Such an influential dude, man. Yeah. I think that dude, his music resonated. He gave birth to a lot of the artists that we have now, especially coming out of L.A.
Yeah.
What was it like just being sewed up next to Draco? You guys would chop it up.
You want to know the craziest part about that? I had no idea who he was. No clue. I had never heard any of his music. Well, I had heard one of his songs, but I didn't even know he was the artist behind the song.
Which one? Do you remember which one?
I believe it was, which one was it?
The freestyle, the impatient.
No, it wasn't the impatient freestyle. It was the Flu Flamin'.
Oh, man.
So I had heard that song, and I didn't know he was the artist behind the song. He actually rapped the song to me a cappella in the cell next to me.
Oh, that's crazy.
No way.
And that's when I was like, I've definitely heard that song. He's like, yeah, that's my song. And I was like, damn, that was crazy. So the relationship me and him had wasn't because everybody, and the thing is that I knew he was somebody, because anytime we would move within the county jail, you would hear people in the halls like, oh shit, that's Draco. Oh, what's up, Draco? Like other inmates, you know, that weren't housed with us. But as we were walking through the halls of county jail, I would see that, you know, because I'm literally walking. We're all walking in a line together. So I would be like, that's crazy, you know, to see people acknowledge him in the halls of the county jail, you know. So that was when I was like, okay, this dude's actually somebody. And then in his cell, he had countless, like literally from floor to the ground to the ceiling. He had letters like fan mail that he would get. So he had his whole cell was covered in pictures, and then he's handed me like a stack of pictures of like him. You know, everybody in county jail has pictures, of themselves. You know, they have their family send in the pictures, and then you know, like, oh, this is what I look like on the streets or whatever. You know, people want to show that this is not who I am. Who you see right here in county jail is not who I am on the streets.
Yeah.
For the most part, you know, so people like to flaunt their pictures or their girl on the streets, like, oh yeah, this is my girl. This,
doing it. I'm a millionaire out there. I got a Ferrari. I got
some
a
people
Lambo.
do. Some people do definitely blow stuff out of proportion and like exaggerate certain things, you know. But because we can't tell if that chain is real or fake on the fucking on the photo,
crazy.
you know.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day. Yeah. People can really be anybody out there, huh?
Oh, definitely. And people run with it. Believe it or not, people run with it. You know, I wasn't one of those people. I actually didn't get pictures sent in until I got out of solitary confinement, and it was just my girl sending me pictures of her. That was it. I just had her sending me pictures of her. I wasn't like, oh, send me pictures of me. Like, I was like, I don't need to see myself, like, you know. So I was like, just send me pictures of you. So, and my son. So she would send me like pictures of her and my little baby at the time. And but yeah, so I was next to Draco, and that was a crazy little time because I honestly didn't know who he was. So I got to know him while I was there with him, because I was only down there with him for, I believe, about 4 months before he got thrown back in general population. So he ended up taking his deal, you know, and then he got thrown in general population because they took the whatever, because everybody that was in that module was either down there because their phone privileges had been taken away, or because they didn't want them on the phone because they thought, you know, he was influential, and then people were threatening the DA on his case or whatever the case was for his specific situation. Although I don't know all the details, I just know that was one of the reasons that they wanted to. They called it a gag order or something like that.
They didn't want him to speak and create public outrage. Probably.
Yeah.
And,
so his order was called a gag order. Mine was just my phone privileges had been revoked, and then other people that were down there, you know, they had other reasons why they were down there. But that was an interesting time. You know, he would write songs all the time. We would watch Saturday Night Live together. That was his thing. He used to love watching Saturday Night Live. So every Saturday night, we would be up at midnight watching Saturday Night Live.
How did that work? You guys would both put the channel on at the same time?
We were in the cell. So we were in the cell next to each other. So there was two TVs in the module, because it was a 6-man module. It's 2904, referred to as the dungeon by people who know about
Old
it.
County? Then, right?
No, it's MCJ, Men's County Jail. Yeah, so it's in downtown. So there's 2 TVs in that module. One TV pertains to cell 1, 2, and 3, and then the other TV pertains to 3, 4, and 5. I mean 4, 5, and 6. You know, so it's just 2 TVs, and there's one remote for each TV. So we would usually, it was never any like clashing about the remote. You know, everybody kind of like knew when it was time to work out, we put on the music channel. When it was Saturday Night Live, everybody would usually be asleep. It would only be me and Draco that would be up that late. Everybody at that time would be asleep, so there was no battling about, oh, I want to watch this. There really was nothing to watch at midnight on a Saturday night, but Saturday Night Live anyway. So I enjoyed it too. He liked it because of the music performances that they would do every. So you know, he's a musical guy, so he used to love watching like who's gonna perform this Saturday. Oh, this person's supposed to be performing on Saturday, so we got to watch that, you know? And so, yeah, that's kind of how it went. He would, You
really got some of his character, bro. I feel like you really genuinely got to know the guy and really, like...
I feel like I definitely got to know a different side of him, you know, being that we were both in that atmosphere, in that environment where we were alone at all times. Yeah. Like, we only got to shower 3 times a week. You know, that was the only time we really got to come out of the cell within the module where I could see his face, you know, because I would have to walk past his cell so I could actually like see his face in those moments. And then a few times that we went to yard when we would be taken up to the roof on the 9,000 floor. So those were the moments where I would see people like, oh shit, that's Draco, you know, when we would be getting walked up to yard which we were still able to have yard when everybody else couldn't because we were in solitary and we were still not going to make contact with each other because we were literally taken to the yard on the roof and just thrown in a bird cage. So we would go from one cage to another cage, individual cages on the roof.
Wait, the yard in county is on the roof?
MCJ it is.
Oh shit!
Yeah, and I never I went to, so ironically enough, even though when you say you're in the county, or you've been to the county can also mean that, like for me, I went to Wayside, which is an hour away from so literally like
your yard is completely different over there. The yard over there, you're like outside, you're on the ground. They have basketball courts, they have, and you can see the in the MCJ yard is like you have a fence above you completely, like you're not actually outside kind of thing, if you want to call it. You are outside, but you're still caged in.
Got you. That's what's going on up there, huh?
Yeah.
In that thing.
Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that, man. Again, just because we know you mentioned that, and I was like, holy crap, he's influential, man. Like,
right.
I know, I used to bump everything he dropped, man. Everything was all workout material. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was able to buff off that. Like, you were able to get your money, to stuff like that.
Yeah.
Real quick, what was it like hearing about his passing?
Oh, so I found out about his passing when I was in prison. So I was in prison, and I was still locked up when he passed away, and so one of the guys, and this was something that I didn't like to talk about too much in prison because I feel like a lot of people are gonna be like, man, this guy's full of shit. You weren't with Draco. He wasn't your neighbor.
Yeah,
because a lot of people come out with stories that are bogus, that are bullshit,
100%.
and so I didn't want to be that guy like, oh yeah, Draco, oh yeah, he was my neighbor. Like so I wouldn't necessarily do that. I wouldn't speak on it. But this one cat, I remember he got off the phone. He had a phone call early in the morning, and he gets off the phone and he comes back to the dorm and he says, yeah, man, my girl just told me that Draco got killed. And the crazy part is he got killed across the street from where I grew up in the parking lot of the sports arena, which is now the BMO Stadium or whatever, because I grew up right there on 40th and Hoover. So then I heard about it, and that's how I found out about it. I found out about it, and I was just like, damn, that's crazy. Because he had told me some things that he had told me he was gonna make me his driver when I got out or whatever. He was like, "Yeah, you could be my driver when you get out."
That's
this
nuts,
and that.
Man.
So I was actually, to a certain extent, kind of looking forward to getting out of prison and him still being around, because I would have reached out. I'm not gonna lie. At some point, if I would have made it out and Draco still would have been around, I would have probably hit him up on IG. I didn't have his phone number or anything like that, but I probably would have hit him up like, "Hey, you remember me? Cell 1 2904. I bet you he would have remembered me." So it's not like, there wasn't too many people down there. It was only 5 of us besides him, So being that I was I was definitely a little hurt by that, and I didn't think he deserved it at all, definitely, because I thought he was a good person, He was just in a fucked up situation.
100%, man. You got to know him, and again, 4 months. They're long months, right? You're in a cell. It's not like you're upstate. You don't get a TV. You don't get nothing.
Yeah, no, those are long months. Those are months where we only have each other to talk to. Either you're reading a book, you're working out, you're watching TV, or you're having a conversation with your neighbor. Those are your 4 options. It's literally nothing else you can do in that cell, or write a letter, I guess, which he would do a lot of. He would do a lot of writing, and he would write songs in there or whatever. And he would like recite them to me at the end of the night. He'd be like, "Hey, what you think about this song I wrote?" And it would all be a cappella, because I wasn't a beat maker. He would always try to get me to like, "Hey, drop a beat for me." I'd be like, "Nah, you got me fucked up. I'm not doing that." My beat don't sound like something out of elementary school.
Yeah, so I with the grinding beat, the one off the desk.
Yeah, exactly. But I wouldn't. I didn't even want to do that. I didn't even want to do that. So he would always just do it a cappella. He would just do his thing a cappella, and that shit would sound hard though. And he would hit me with like certain songs, like, "Yeah, I just wrote this today," and he would like, rap it, and I'll be like, "Yeah, that one sounds dope." And don't get me wrong, I would criticize. I'd be like, "Yeah, that one, I wasn't really feeling that one that much." He's like, "Yeah, this one probably ain't for you then."
This one ain't for you with a smart answer.
Exactly, exactly. He wouldn't take it as like, "Oh, let me change it up." He would just be like, "This one just ain't for you." Like,
cool. Did you hear any song that you hear now that you heard him rehearse and wasn't recorded yet?
Okay,
like,
so not necessarily, because believe it or not, I haven't really listened to a lot of his music since I got out. I heard a few of his songs that were hot, but the one thing that he did do, that he told us he was gonna do, he said he was gonna make a song with Drake. And we all laughed in his face. All laughed in his face in the cell. everybody that was down there was laughing like, this motherfucker talking about he gonna make a song with Drake when he get out. He got out, and we was on the radios, because I don't know if you know this, we have little radios in high power. They give us little radios in solitary. So we have little radios, and we're listening to the radio, and then this dude, Fly, that was in cell 6, says like, hey, Draco's on the radio with Drake. And we like, nah. He say, hey, go to this radio station. So we go to the radio station, and it was Drake and Draco on a song together. I think like a month after he got out. And this is when we were still in solitary. So we're still in the same state that he left us in. Same place, and he's out there making a song with Drake.
That's nuts.
And we were like, that's nuts. This dude really did what he said he was going to do.
Man.
Oh, for sure. Because he said it, and I promise you we laughed. We were like, bro, you full of shit. You ain't finna make no song with Drake. And the man got out and made a song with Drake.
Damn.
I
And
remember
that shit went viral, too. It was all over the radio. It was nuts.
fire. Yeah, I was bumping
nuts.
that.
Yeah.
I thought it was whatever, when they put them together.
Uh-huh.
But no, Drake shouted him out on that. I remember everyone was wild.
Yeah.
They're like a dude from LA, Draco,
Yeah.
inspiration.
Fresh out of jail.
Yep.
And he dropped the song with Drake. So we was like, that's when I knew he was the real deal too. Because like I told you, when I landed right there next to him, I didn't know who he was. I just knew him for that Flu Flamin' song that I was like, oh, that's your song? Oh, that's cool. You get me? So I never looked at him as a celebrity. I just looked at him as another inmate that was just so happened to be right there next to me. But then, like I told you, that's when I started seeing like, okay, he must actually be somebody. When I saw the way people acknowledged him and wanted to greet him and wanted to like get his attention, that's when I knew like this dude must actually be somebody. And that's when I, as I got out, then I started realizing more like, oh, this dude was really somebody out here.
He was huge, yeah.
Let's talk about that, because I know we're running a little short on some stuff for here too. I want to talk about you, kind of like that transition of you getting out and what your goals were and what they are now, especially.
Okay, so I got out, and my first job.
Real quick, let's can we recap the
go ahead.
stuff?
Yeah.
As far as like, so you get sent upstate, you start doing your time. You were assuming you were gonna do 6, but you end up doing the 2.5.
Yep.
And I'm gonna say this now because I'm confident in saying that you were already kind of equipped with a lot of the skills you needed. So you might not have needed self-help groups or college or anything like that, because you kind of already implemented that stuff in that was part of your everyday already.
Yeah.
Maybe briefly kind of touch, how'd you do your time and then getting out? What was that?
I did my time on the basketball court.
Okay.
I was out on the basketball court every day, working out in basketball, pull-ups, dips, push-ups, and basketball. That's how I did my time.
It's programming.
And a CD player with CDs. That's what I was doing. I was listening to music. I was on the phone with either my baby mama or my mom, and that was it. I didn't really talk to too many people on the outside world, and my life in there was really just a lot of physical activity, just working out, basketball. Basketball was the majority, though, to be completely honest. Anytime they popped that door and it was time to go to yard, I was the first one turning in my prison ID so that I could get that basketball.
Check out the basketball.
Check out the basketball. That was it.
You're doing your 2.5. You kind of go the sports route. You're doing all the physical stuff.
Yeah.
You were already equipped with some of the educational stuff. You had been to college and all that.
Yeah.
What was the plan gearing out towards getting out of prison now for after being down for 2.5?
Ooh-wee. See, that's the thing. I don't know. I know a lot of people like make that plan, but honestly, I didn't come out with a plan. I'm not even gonna front. Like I didn't come out with a plan. I just thought it was gonna be hard. Like I don't know. I don't know if my mentality just wasn't. I was just came out, and the first thing I did was go to the local park right here on 43rd just to go play basketball. That's what I was doing every day. And then luckily I reached out to a friend. A friend of mine reached out to me when he saw that I was out of prison, and he plugged me in with his dad who was doing flooring. So I started installing floors, and that was my Monday through Friday, sometimes even Saturday, I was installing floors. And anytime, literally, as soon as I got off of work, I would come home, change, and go to the park and play basketball. So that was my program for a while, just going to go work, install floors, and then go to the park and play basketball. And then I met a girl at that park that told me about you guys here at PV Jobs.
Word of mouth, huh?
Yeah, Jasmine. I met Jasmine, and she was the reason that I came here to this program. And then I came to this program, and I started the 500-hour construction program with you guys, and now I'm here. You know,
There you go, man.
yeah.
still
It's
working
fire.
on that 500 hours, and you know, I'm getting there. I'm getting there slowly
Yeah.
but surely, but I'm getting there. Then I actually enjoy the aspect of construction. You know, like building something every day, and then you get home. You know, after working a day of building something, you actually feel accomplished. You know,
There you go.
like you actually got something done that day.
Which makes sense, man. Makes sense. Especially, now at a little older, right? You've weathered the storm. You've
Yeah.
been through a lot.
Yeah.
And you're still pushing, man. You're still pushing. You come in here every day. You're showing it that you want it, right? Whatever that is, but you're on the right track,
Yeah.
and you're always open to anything. We throw out anything, and you're like,
yeah.
I'll do it. I'm not tripping. Let's do it.
Right.
Oh yeah, because I'm that's the one thing that about me too. That like I'm open to learning new things. Like when Brian presented this podcasting thing to me, and editing, video editing, and stuff like that, I was like, I've never done that. Never tried to edit a video. I'm not too big on social media. I don't have a big following. I just take a simple picture and upload it. I don't do editing behind the picture or try to, you get me? I just never have done that. But then he introduced me with the idea of like, hey, what would you think about doing some video editing? So it's like, I'm willing to, jump on anything at this point and learn something new.
No, I
'Cause I'm
respect
always about
that.
that.
Joshua was one of the guys that we can always hit up, even during turkey giveaway shit, all that stuff, man.
Yeah.
Joshua's always here, bro. He's always looking up and looking out, bro. I appreciate that, and I'm excited to kind of see what the podcast stuff is gonna look like, because
Yeah.
you're gonna be part of the new RMP behind the scenes if y'all haven't heard.
Yeah.
But it's something new they're doing. Where they're gonna be our interns gonna be doing some skits, doing behind the scenes of the RMP stuff,
Yeah.
and some fire stuff. So you guys are gonna be seeing Joshua a little bit for sure, because dude's funny on the low, but he ain't but funny today. He ain't
Yeah.
funny because we on a serious note, but
Yeah,
he's
this was
funny.
more
I
of a
swear.
serious note. This is more of a serious note.
Yeah.
But no, that transition, man, you coming out and you being able to you play basketball and keep yourself busy and staying away,
Yeah.
even though you're still in your community, right?
Yep,
But
still
you've
in the same
matured,
Still in the
like-
community, man. Yeah, that's the crazy part. You didn't have
I
to
just
get-
don't go over there. I don't go over there much to
He's
hang
like,
out.
now it's just stay away.
I just
sense.
know I
You
just
know?
know what environments to like
Yeah.
not be in every day. Don't get me wrong, I go visit my boys every now and then,
Mhm.
but they're still in that mentality where it's just like fuck it. They still got that fuck it mentality, and I can't be around
Dangerous.
a fuck it mentality with 2 strikes.
Mhm.
A fuck it
Damn,
mentality
man,
is
I
gonna
didn't-
get me that 3rd strike, so I can't spend too much time around that kind of mentality. Although they're good people, they just they're still living the life that they chose. So
Yeah.
I can't do anything to steer them away from that.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that, because that's really what we highlight here is everyone has their moment. Whatever
Yeah.
that moment is where they pivot away from that lifestyle and start just living regular life.
Yeah.
That's what we want to highlight, is just so that way people can also take away whatever it was to say, hey, you know what? Some people don't got to do 30. Some people can do 6 months. Why? Because in 6 months they lost just as much as the person that did 30. You never
Yeah.
know, right? It's all everyone's circumstances. And the hope is, they take these things, bits and pieces away, implement them into their own journey, their own program, and they can figure it out a little smoother, hopefully.
Right.
you
Yeah,
know?
definitely.
So again, bright individual. What's the plan right now, Josh? You on parole?
No, I've been off parole for about almost a year now, I would say.
Perfect, man.
Congrats.
And so I've been good. I haven't had any run-ins with the law. Haven't had any problems, and just working and trying to put myself in a good environment with you guys. Which you guys provide that definitely here at PV Jobs. So, good environment, good people that want to see you strive to do better, and they put you in positions. You guys put us in positions to like be seen by people who can, employ us or give us a career. People that are offering you a career. So I feel like me being here right now is just a matter of time until that happens for me.
Yeah, blessings are gonna come, man.
100%. 100%. Well, shit. With that being said, if you got anything you want to share, anything that you probably thought maybe in the past,
Your
where
pretty
you're like,
boy
"Oh,
Instagram or something.
if I
Nothing.
ever-
I'm playing,
Nah, it's all good. But I guess I would just say, man, just if you find yourself in a situation coming out of prison and you feel lost and like you ain't got nowhere to go, just try to stay positive and try to surround yourself with people who are actually doing something, good in their lives, and you surround yourself with the right people, eventually you're going to win as well.
There you
I
go.
love that, man. That's something that I think anybody can
Yeah.
put forward and have a positive outcome with.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Well, with that being said, thank you, Josh, for
Yeah.
taking the time.
No
Yes,
problem.
Reentry
guys.
Network podcast, another one in the
Appreciate
chamber.
being
Let's
here.
get it.